Hey everybody, ronarray here, and today I wanted to introduce a new series of videos called Great or Bait. I'm going to test various endgame strategies and rate it on Great or Bait scale, based on how it went. And the first thing that I tried was 30 Simulacrum runs in a row. With the changes introduced in 3.25, Simulacrum looks promising for currency farming, or does it? I will showcase a detailed breakdown of loot received and time spent together with my thoughts and ratings. Use timestamps as usual for any topics in particular and let me know in the comments if there's a mechanic or a strategy you want me to test in the future. Let's see if all Simulacrums are worth the hassle. Quick remark for newer players. Simulacrum is a separate instance that you can open with map device where you need to defeat waves of monsters. To assemble it, you need Splinters that drop during Delirium encounters on regular maps. In 3.25, GGG lowered the amount of Simulacrum waves from 30 to 15, deleting first 15 waves that felt a little unrewarding. So right now, you will be much closer to receiving cool drops from wave 30, at least in theory. So how much I paid for the test? One divine can bring you 4 simulacrums. So for 30 I paid 7.5 divines, which is not too much. But another story is pretty much the time that you will need to complete all of the simulacrums. So on average, I've been spending about 20 minutes in every simulacrum. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, it's based on loot and how quick you can complete the waves. But pretty much 20 minutes on average, that's been the golden standard that I used to calculate. I could use 18 minutes, but I think 20 just works a little better. So it's about 3 simulacrums per hour, considered that I needed time to loot and to sort the loot out. That way, in 10 hours, you will be able to complete like 30 simulacrums. If you will be a little faster than me and more efficient, you can go for 35, but I don't think that it will be easy to complete more. So generally, 30 simulacrums and 10 hours is the main metrics for today's test. Let's see what I've been able to drop during those 10 hours, and if it's worth it overall. So first off, let's start with general currency. I received about 138 Chaos Orbs, which is not too good and it's almost like 1 divine. Chaoses are not really dropping in Simulacrums that often, so I would consider it normal. I also received 3 pure divines, which is kind of alright too, and it's not bad. 4 Exalted Orbs, it's not that important, and 6 Orb of Annulment. I also received 10 Ancient Orbs and 37 Gem Scatters. So I also received a lot of additional bubblegum, but I never counted it because bubblegum right now has a very low price. So just focus on the currency that makes some sense. I also have 582 stack decks, which is pretty awesome to be honest, and that's a big chunk of my whole profit for it. I think all the currency that I received is around 10 divines worth together, like with stack decks, chaoses, divines, and a little parts of the bubblegums that I will be able to sell for some prices. So about 10 divines in normal currency is pretty much what I received. So next step is pretty much fossils that I received. I received a decent amount of those, but most of them just cost 1 chaos. So for example, Dance cost 1 chaos or Jacked. The only fossil that can provide a proper price is Shattering Fossil. It costs about 13 or maybe even 14 chaoses, which is pretty nice. Also Corroded could be sold for 4 or 5, depends on the situation. I also received at least 2 Prime Chaotic Resonators, which is not bad as well. So generally I think all the fossil tab gave me about 2 divines on average, and not a lot more. Just because most of the fossils just like very cheap and it will be a hassle to sell them. So the next step is pretty much oils, bridgestones and splinters. As you can see, I dropped a lot of oils, but I tried to just steamroll them and upgrade all of them. At the end I received about 1 opalescent and 1 silver oil, after all of that looting. I also received some bridgestones, but most of those just like 12 to 15 chaoses, so not a lot, and some Karuis and Eternal Emblems, parts of Marrakesh, and stuff like that. So generally, I would say everything on the screen would amount 1 divine at maximum, and we will just count it as 1 after all the changes. So another part is basic Scarabs. I dropped so many basic Scarabs that it's been kinda hard to calculate. However, I pretty much managed. Right here I have 516 basic Scarabs in all of that part. And on average they cost about 2 chaoses per one, on average, so that's about 1000 chaoses. I have about 10 Scarabs of the Cloisters, 6 chaoses per one, 14 Scarabs of the Ascent, that's about 8 chaoses per one, only 2 Scarabs of Treasure, so not a lot, 7 chaoses per one. Ambush Scarab of Discernment is a very good drop, those cost about 22 chaoses per one, so that's almost 100 chaoses right here, and a few other options for 60 chaoses such as Calcification or Terrors. So generally the whole Scarab set costed about 1500 chaoses in the sum. So I would calculate it as about 10 divines on average in Scarabs. But keep in mind that it will take a lot of time to sell all of them for 10 divines. Another step is pretty much Megalomaniacs. I dropped so many of them as you can see, and the biggest issue with those, it's very hard to price check them. And most of the time Megalomaniacs will cost completely nothing and will never be sold to anybody. So in general, I would not count Megalomaniacs in that test, because that could be complete hit or miss, and even if you will drop a good one, maybe you will be unable to sell those. So generally, I will consider them as 0 right now, even if they could bring some currency to you. But price checking all of them and testing that part could be very time consuming, and there's not a lot of people who searching for Megalomaniacs and ready to pay significant amount of currency for it. So next part is pretty much split personalities. I dropped a lot of basic split personalities and most of them worth less than 5 chaoses. So it's not really that popular. For example, ASTR and Armor is definitely not the best pick, and usually you will be able to sell them, but not for a lot of price. So you can get 20 chaoses for that one, for example, and you can get 30 for Intelligence and Mana, about 40 for ASTR, Accuracy Rating and Intelligence and Energy Shield, about 120 chaoses per ASTR and Intelligence, and there's only one split personality that I dropped that has a significant cost. It's pretty much ASTR and Maximum Life. It costs about 6 divines currently, like 5.5 maybe, and I think that's a very popular pick for a lot of stacking belts. So generally, only one of them worth it, and the whole set I would say cost about 7 divines on average, so we can count it as 7. So talking about voices, most of the time when you're farming Simulacrum, you expect to drop very good voices, like 1 passive point or at least 3. But out of 30 Simulacrums, I dropped 0 good voices. So my best been 5 small passive skills. As you can see, I dropped 3 of those, but they cost about 15 chaoses. And I dropped a lot of 7 small passive skills once, and all of them are useless and cost effectively nothing. So we can count all the voices like maybe half of the divine, but even like that it will be hard to sell them, because 5 small passives are definitely not that popular. Well, I expected a little better results, and I expected at least 1 good voices drop, but got nothing. Well, RNG it is. So next step are essences. Simulacrum drops a lot of essences, and generally it just drops basic screaming ones. However, I just upgraded most of them to deafening because that's probably the only option how we can sell them. And as you can see, I have only about 7 per each type. So it's not a lot, because most of those essences will cost only about 3 chaoses. If I will be able to get 1 divine out of all essences that dropped here, it would be good. So we can just consider it as 1, because it's a very small percentage of drops. So talking about other significant drops, I've dropped 3 Darker Half Divination cards. Each of them should cost about 60 chaos, so it's 1.2 divines per 3. I also dropped 1 small cluster jewel, a pretty nice one, item level 84 and 3 passive skills with mana reservation efficiency. I think that one could cost about 1.3 divines as well, so it could be nice. I also dropped Wrath, level 21 with quality 22, and it should cost about 90 chaoses. Together with Grace, that should cost, just for level 21, about 60. So all of that we can calculate for about 3 more divines. And that's pretty much it out of big drops. I also dropped like small cluster jewel, but only with 2 passives and mana reservation. It will cost only like 30 chaoses, or maybe even less. And a few basic large cluster jewels, but both of them are like very cheap. So we can calculate all those drops for only about 3 divines right here. And the last part, I dropped some Mortal Grief, Mortal Rage, Mortal Hope and Mortal Ignorance parts. Most of those are not really cost a lot, aspect of Mortal Ignorance. So 6 Mortal Ignorance should be closer to 1 divine. And the rest probably 1 divine more, together with sacrifices that I dropped in the process too. It's not a lot, to be honest, but we can count all of this for like 2 divines more, just to be a little more precise. Because, well, that stuff dropped and we need to count it. So here you can see the loot table of everything that I dropped. So after all, that's about 36 divines in pure drops, and that's not a big number. We also will need to just take into account pretty much the price that we paid for simulacrums themselves. So it leaves us with 28 divines of profit, if we will be able to sell all of that. So 20 divines profit per 10 hours will lead us to a final number, which would be around 2.8 divines per hour while farming simulacrum. If you will be faster than me, or if your build will be a little better in terms of clearing, you probably noticed, but with the lacerate it's a little harder to clear, and most of the time I've been receiving only 4 or 5 rewards, so no 5 and 6, what you should usually receive in Simulacrum. So I think you can reach about 3.5 divines per hour, maybe even 4, but that's pretty much it. On average, I would say right now Simulacrum yields about 3 divines per hour if your build can handle it just fine. So talking about great or bait scale. Right now, I think Simulacrum is not that good as many people envisioned it. It heavily relies on big drops, and if you will not receive those big drops, well, it will be a little bad. So right now, I would place Simulacrum exactly at the middle of the scale, and I'm very reluctant because I honestly wanted to put it a little closer to bait part, but it's not that bad, and there's still a chance that you're going to receive that big drop, so I think it will stay exactly at the middle. Can I recommend it as a farming strategy? Not really. Can you do that if you enjoy Simulacrum overall? Well, yes, and you will receive some currency back, which is not horrible, but definitely not that good. So that's the final decision, just the middle of the scale. So that's been my video about Simulacrum. Is it great or is it bait? I hope you enjoyed the whole ride, and I still think that it's been a very fun test, and I will probably do more of those in the future. Thank you very much for watching, subscribe if you like such content, and tell me in comments what do you think. Is it great or bait based on all amount of drops that you've seen in the video? Like, what do you think? Thank you again, and ronarray out.